Hi guys from Canada. These two things will change your life. You may have very right EQ curve, but you believe it's wrong because of these two things. You choose wrong settings on your compressors because of these two things. You choose your favorite plugins in the wrong way because of these two things. This video will have crazy number of different examples. I recommend to watch them all because some of them can be totally game-changing for you. By the way guys, the cool thing is you can attend one free trial class of one of the most powerful audio production courses. 9 months online crafted system. You will be connected to one of the real classes with my current students who are taking this course right now, so you can see exactly how we study. After it, if you enroll, I take only monthly payments. Hundreds of students graduated from this course over the last 8 years. As a bonus, we have unicorn check-in sessions where I open your projects in real time in front of you and compare them to the best sounding mixes of all time. And I'm not just comment, I check your settings, I show your mistakes and how to make decisions. Information about me, my course and 240 reviews you can find in the first pinned comment or in the description. But instead of reading, just get a free trial class because nobody knows better than you what works for you. And just ask for the course details in email. How to contact me, the information is in the first pinned comment or in the description or on the screen. Example, how your frequency curve may be totally right, but the level cheats you. Listen to the snare drum in the mix. It will not be sounding as clear, as open, as present as we want. It will be a bit lost and boxy. I decided to boost a bit of highs with the SSL4000E. This slow-going shelf is known of boosting highs and upper mid-range at the same time. This snare drum literally overwhelms all other sounds right now in the mix. And you can say, yeah, this high frequency boost is wrong, it's not suitable. It's not really about the curve I created, it's about increased volume. It's obvious when you boost some energy in highs and upper mid-range, overall volume of the instrument becomes louder. So what I do, I go back to the plugin and I use output fader to compensate increased volume. When I put this fader, let's say 1 decibel quieter, and now I try to compare it again, before and after. After it will be sounding much more transparent, present and focused, but it will have still the right volume. Check it out, without and with. Without and with. So now the snare drum sounds better, but it still has the right volume. So the curve was right. The volume was wrong. Let's talk about second thing, called temporarily balance. Imagine this, there is some John Doe. Let's say this frequency curve already was in a sample and it already sounded pretty fine. The guy, for example, put this fader, let's say too much, too loud, you know. So our friend John Doe listened to this snare drum. Something wrong here, maybe some bad frequencies over there. And the guy started looking for bad frequencies and cutting those frequencies. Let's say eventually the guy created this frequency curve. I just like imagine inappropriate behavior, right? So you cut, let's say, some low mid, some upper mid. Who knows why? Because you believe they are bad frequencies. And when you play it, snare drum actually sounds pretty bad. It sounds thin and somehow like too much sizzle on top. But at least you have now much better volume of the snare drum. And John Doe may believe it's a good frequency curve, not because of it's a good frequency curve, but just because of its more appropriate volume. So instead of just trying to achieve proper volume with some random strange EQing or plugins or compressors, instead you should always keep so-called temporarily balance before EQing. Your snare should not be too loud or too quiet, and then you will be able to make appropriate decisions what the snare really requires. If you start with a too loud instrument, you always will feel like you need to cut some frequencies. And opposite, if you're gonna have this snare drum, let's say, too quiet in the mix, you would need to boost some frequencies to make it at least audible in the mix. And when you're gonna boost those frequencies, you will think you found great frequencies, but no, you didn't find great frequencies. You probably just found better volume level. Next example, how about you try to find bad frequencies and to cut it? Listen to these two synthesizers. They kind of like work together, and the second one, which is muddier one, like a background of it. Listen to this synthesizer. So in the mix it sounds muddy. All other sounds in the mix much more transparent, defined, detailed, and this one like spoils everything, it like masks everything else. So what I do, I already found bad frequency and I cut it. The problem is when I cut this 500 Hz on this synthesizer simply sounds too quiet. And you may believe this movement on this synthesizer is kind of wrong. You know why? Because you don't hear it. This movement on this equalizer is absolutely right what this synthesizer really needs. The problem is, after you cut these mid frequencies, the whole synthesizer becomes too quiet. And you may get rid of your right EQ movement just because of you didn't control volume compensation. I increase output volume on the synthesizer by a couple of decibels. And now it sounds right. It has better frequencies and proper volume. Next example, you try to compare longer attack, shorter attack. Critical decision actually in many mixing situations. Heavy bass. By the way, I want to tell you in advance there is still something wrong with it, because comparing compressor making 7 dB versus compressor making 3 dB still sometimes doesn't make too much sense. We're gonna finish this comparison and then I'm gonna address this difference in compression as well. We're gonna call it long attack, it will be our longer version. So we press play and notice how this bass sounds in the mix. Try to concentrate on the bass. Fast position, and it will be our short version. Too quiet, too weak, like doesn't sound as powerful, and of course you're gonna choose the previous attack. Previous position sounds more detailed, more powerful, like this. But don't you think it's not fair? Look at VU meter. When you have long attack, you have only 3 dB of compression. When you use fast attack, you have 7 dB of compression, so you increase amount of compression by the shorter attack. So no surprise, it sounds much quieter. So what you compare? Do you think it's fair to compare quiet bass versus loud bass and claiming that just because of bass louder, longer attack sounds better? It's absolutely not fair, right? I use this vintage graphic editor for tube saturation. This is the bass and red line is the threshold level. How compressor works, it makes peaks above the red line quieter. You achieve the maximum amount of suppression only after attack period of time. Which means if you have 50 milliseconds attack, let's say from here to here, even though your very first peak is very loud, it's supposed to be compressed by a lot, it will not be compressed as much, because attack period of time is in early stage. Which means you're just gonna compress just a bit over here, a bit more over there, and only after 50 milliseconds you finally get as much as you need. Just because the very first peak, which is supposed to be compressed a lot, is compressed just a bit, you get in general less amount of compression. With a short attack you get much more compression because your compressor dives instantly, very quickly at least. Diving deeper over here you get more amount of compression. On this compressor is 7 decibels. For this particular reason you compress 7 by fast attack and you compress only 3 by long attack. So 3 dB making your bass just a bit quieter. 7 dB makes your bass much quieter. So to make it fair compared, where you're really gonna analyze what really attack gives you instead of just like, oh, this is louder, this is quieter, you need to compensate volume. Fast attack over here, I just gonna need to have more output knob, so I increase it. So now we will have relatively the same volume for the longer attack and for the shorter attack. First one was a bit more about punch, you know, like ta-ta. Second one was a bit more like ta-ta, you know, instead of like t-t, it was a bit more like longer attack was a bit punchier and tighter. And second option with a shorter attack was a bit like smoother, but like fatter and bigger in the tail. As I said earlier, maybe it's not so fair to compare short attack versus long attack by having totally different amount of compression. As you saw, fast attack gives you 7 dB of compression and long attack gives you 3 dB of compression. So the question is, if you really compare long attack and short attack, or you'd rather compare more compression versus less compression. It's also related to the topic called volume compensation. Check it out. 7 dB usually gives you much more saturation, and it may be sounding almost like overcompression in some circumstances, especially with CL1B. Actually, I want to relax the amount of compression with a fast attack. 3 dB of compression with a fast attack, and also I want to match output volume to again make proper comparison between faster attack and longer attack. So now you will make this type of comparison, right? By the way, I remind you, if you want a free trial class, send me an email how to contact me in the first pinned comment. Okay, the next very interesting example. Let's say you try to choose your favorite Pultec equalizer. Universal Audio released this plugin in early 2000. Then they say, we release more improved version of it, and everybody like, oh my god, if I really need to pay for it, let's compare, let's play them in a mix, one versus the other one, and let's decide if it really gives us something new, right? And your third option, let's say this Waves plugin. Right, as you can see, I absolutely copy the same settings on all of them, absolutely everything. But let me show you what really will affect your decision over here. As you can see, I throw this white noise through this channel. When I activate first Universal Audio plugin over here in the DAW meter, I'm gonna put it here. Minus 12.3 is first plugin. The second plugin, minus 11.9. And third plugin, minus 10.5. I'm sure now you can figure out by yourself what it really means, right? Basically, if in the mix one of two options would be just simply louder than the other one, it may make you feel it sounds more detailed, more powerful, more in your face, and you may just choose the one which just simply sounds a bit louder. So again, if you don't compensate volume, you're gonna make wrong decisions on what is your favorite Pultec equalizer. The next example, listen to this bit. Let's say you want more punch on this kick drum. So this is the kick sample, this is how it looks like. You put the threshold down, and let's say you achieve maximum amount of suppression only after this period of time, which is long attack. It means the tail will be mostly compressed by needed amount. For example, you decided to compress by 6 dB. You're gonna have just a bit of compression for this peak. You're probably not gonna really compress pretty at all the very first peak. When you lower this tail down by, let's say, 10 dB, your kick becomes like too quiet. And you may think it's a wrong decision to do it like this, because you say, yeah, I don't hear it, probably it's not very good compressor. After compression, you bring volume back, which we're talking about today, called volume compensation. You're gonna make kick drum loud again, like this, but what you're gonna do with this, initial transients will be pushed as well, and this is how you get much more snap on the kick drum. Instead of just like it will sound like ta-ta. So on this compressor I don't have automatic volume compensation right now. 17 milliseconds attack. Now what I do, I put threshold down, and over here on the indicator of how much I compress, let's say by 10 dB. Now let's compare before and after. So when you listen to without compressor, you at least hear the kick. When you activate this compressor, you don't hear the kick. And you can say, yeah, it's weak, it's like thin and small, not interesting sounding. But wait a second, how about volume compensation? 10 dB of compression means something in your kick becomes 10 dB quieter. So let's put at least 7 dB back, you know what I mean? So I put this output gain up. And now before and after, so this is before. Kick is audible, loud and powerful, but much more tight and punchy, if you like, sound like this. The next example, imagine you have a vocal and bass. You sing like volume compensation, and bass goes like boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean? Now imagine you saturate your vocal with enhancer. If you saturate your vocal, some overtones of your vocal becomes taller, and it could be sometimes enough to hide a bit those overtones of the bass at the same frequencies, if it happens to be at the same frequencies. So this is how your bass can lose its kind of definition because of you saturated your vocal. Now you just need to add a bit more volume on the bass to compensate it, and you will be fine. So it's also volume compensation. Let me show you important example on temporary balance. It means you need to keep proper balance of the instrument no matter what. In the beginning of mixing, after applying any processor, before compressing my vocal, I already set up proper volume of the vocal. Now I apply this compressor and we get this result.
AC independence, AC independence, AC independence, AC independence.
And let's say I want to decide if I want CL1B or 1176 on the vocal, right? For example, I turn this 1176 on. When I show you this, it's CL1B. When I show you this, it's 1176.
AC independence, AC independence, AC, AC independence, AC independence.
So obviously CL1B sounds better, less drowning in the mix with CL1B, sounds a bit richer, a bit more open and defined, and I by mistake will choose CL1B in this comparison. Before compression and after compression with CL1B I kept proper volume. With 1176 before compression it was louder, and after compression I made it somehow quieter. Vocals overtones just simply not as quiet with CL1B because CL1B just a bit louder than 1176. After I compensate volume on this 1176 it beats CL1B easily. The reason why? Because vocal just simply sounds more even. It sounds evened out.
AC independence, AC independence.
Now it has enough clarity, definition and openness, exactly like CL1B has. But CL1B has an issue on this vocal. I use fixed mode, which is 1 millisecond attack and 50 milliseconds release. I'm not saying CL1B is worse than 1176, I mean with these settings it's worse. It just simply throws out the tail of the last word independence syllable dance of the second line. So it's just like AZ independence on the second line. Check it out.
AC independence, AC independence, AC independence, AC.
You know, like that. So it goes like louder in volume. The curve of optical compressor with the short release is pretty different in comparison to 1176 release curve.
AC independence, AC independence, AC independence.
It holds equal volume and vocals is just simply better in the mix. I just saying that quiet level of 1176 in the first place made it sound bad. It sounded like drowning and you chose CL1B. But actually, if you match proper volume between CL1B and 1176, you actually choose 1176. But again, what I can teach you in this short video, I recommend you to get a free trial class. You will be connected to a real class with my students who are taking this course right now, so you can see exactly how we study. Don't forget, I put only 10% of the power of my course to my videos. 90% I obviously keep for my students. You can start with a free trial class. How to contact me, the information is in the first pinned comment or in the description or on the screen.